Welcome to another episode of the Insurance Leadership Podcast. I'm Ryan Eaton, your host, and honored to have you listening in with us today. Today, we're going to talk about how large insurance companies take products to market. And we have a guest that has over 55,000 employees in his organization, and they're one of the top 10 largest global insurance companies according to Forbes. This episode is going to be one you don't want to miss. So we're going to have Chris Howard on the show today with Zurich, and he is the head of the North American market, and he's going to walk us through how big companies take products to market. All right, Chris, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
I am good, thank you.
I appreciate you being on the show this morning, and I'd love to get started with maybe getting our audience a little overview about you, maybe kind of hitting where you live, maybe a little bit about your family, kind of your hobbies, some of the things you enjoy, if you don't mind.
Sure. I live in suburban Philadelphia. Been here for probably 10 or 15 years since I moved back from Southern California, as I mentioned earlier. I have 3 children who really aren't children, a 26-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 20-year-old. I also have a 3-year-old grandson, which really is a weird thing for someone who's only early 50s to say, but I do. And, I enjoy spending time with them whenever I can. I think the one thing that this pandemic has done for all of us is it's brought us closer to our families. And for me, I have everyone under my roof right now, so it's really brought us closer to my families. I enjoy golfing. I do have a place on the Jersey Shore, so we do get down to the ocean a lot. Those 2 or 3 times a year when I do get to surf, it's a lot of fun. But it is New Jersey, and we just enjoy being down there. It's a different life when you drive over a bridge and you're on a kind of a channel island.
Oh, that sounds amazing. So you have all your kids under your roof right now. Is your grandson or granddaughter with you as well?
And my grandson is with us as well. Yep. In our daylight basement, we built a two-bedroom condo for them. So they live downstairs.
Man, that is fantastic. I heard someone once tell me that the definition of success in a good life is having your kids and grandkids all sitting at a table with you, enjoying a meal and spending time with you. And it sounds like you got a great setup with having everybody close by.
I do. It's great. No, I appreciate it.
That's awesome, Chris. Well, look, why don't you, before we kind of get into some of the questions we got for the podcast today, do you mind giving maybe the audience a little bit of background on kind of what brought you into the insurance industry? Most people, it seems like, don't plan on going into the insurance industry, but they end up landing in the insurance industry. So maybe kind of how you got into it, maybe some of your previous roles, and it'd be a great overview.
Sure. I would say that is very consistent with me. I went to school at a small Pennsylvania college called Shippensburg University for journalism. I got out of school in right around 1990 at a time when finding a job was finding a job. You were lucky to found a job. And, I went to work as a collector for Chrysler Credit. Some people can do that job. Some people can't. I was one of those people who just was never fond of calling somebody up at dinner time, telling them that they owed me $300. So, I was lucky enough to find a job in a marketing type role, which kind of felt like journalism to me. And from there, I parlayed it into a role at a life insurance company as a direct marketer. So the beginnings of my insurance career were direct marketing to members of associations like the American Legion and the VFW, selling them a graded benefit life insurance product. Telemarketing, I wasn't the telemarketer, but we managed programs whereby we would contact early customers of First Card Visa, back when there weren't as many people who had Visa cards as they do today, selling accidental death insurance. So funny how we land where we land, but that was the beginning of my career in accident and health insurance. Throughout the course of my career, I started selling for a company called American Bankers Insurance Group, which became Assurant Group, selling credit insurance in the mid to late 1990s. From there, I went to a company called Balboa Insurance Group, whereby we sold those same credit insurance programs, but we also marketed a forced order hazard insurance product, which was more or less homeowners insurance that for those customers who didn't have it or couldn't provide proof of homeowners insurance, we would place coverage. We were owned by Countrywide prior to the financial crisis. And, after the financial crisis, as we may all know, Countrywide imploded, having 7 million, what they called pay option arms, which didn't fare well in the crash of the subprime mortgage marketplace. So I went on and I worked for a motor club for a while. Motor club, believe it or not, is very similar to insurance. Your claim is just different. Your claim is dispatching somebody to tow a car. And from there, jumped into Chubb in right around 2008, 2009. Spent 10 or 15 years call it 10 to 12 years at Chubb. We were acquired by ACE in the mid 2015, 2016 timeframe. And the culture changed. It didn't feel, after 3 years at ACE, at the ACE Chubb version of Chubb, I was ready to move on. And, Zurich just happened to need somebody to manage their accident and health practice. Right time, right place. And that's what landed me where I'm at today.
So did you come on to Zurich right before or right around the time of COVID?
I joined Zurich in March of 2020. So I met everybody at Zurich this way, which was really interesting. Companies were able to flip a switch and go from, face to face, belly to belly, day in the office type situations to Zoom calls, Microsoft Team calls, without that much of a hitch, other than the hitch we experienced earlier.
That's right.
Interesting that, Zurich puts on a golf tournament down in New Orleans once a year. And I was down there a month ago, and I met almost everybody that I had met on Zoom calls or team calls for the first time in person a month ago.
Oh, wow. I went to that golf tournament, fantastic golf tournament, by the way. So I'm in Jackson, Mississippi. So New Orleans is about 3 hours away. So we went down there with a company that asked us to go. And so we went down there, enjoyed the golf tournament. It was great. But I had to have been special for you to be able to see people from all over the country that you've been talking to for 2 years and finally get to meet them.
It was great. It's interesting to translate how people look on TV to how people look in person. I think it does add weight.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people say it adds 10 pounds. I feel like for me, it adds about 20 pounds. So I've tried to work on my lens. Well, look, tell us a little bit before we get to the question. I'd love to know about kind of what your role at Zurich looks like right now. I know you're head of market and for the life, accident, and health for North America. Kind of go in what that looks like on a day-to-day basis.
So I manage a group of about 150 people that focus on selling different kinds of life, accident, and health products. We focus primarily on 4 or 5 different marketplaces. In accident and health, we focus on occupational accident insurance, group accident insurance, with specialty health, which is kind of stop loss. And then we have a pretty big travel insurance business. And then on the life side, we focus more on the affluent side of the business. Day in and day out, I would say, I rely on a team of profit center managers that kind of own each of those different business lines. And within each of those different business lines, they have a staff of distribution people and they have a staff of underwriting people. So for me, my role is more or less to manage the P&Ls and the growth of our accident and health business within a really big property and casualty business. I would say what I enjoy is spending time with people like you doing these kind of events, talking to customers day in and day out, the relationship management side of the business. I rely on the actuaries and the underwriters to make sure that the business we put out there is profitable and appropriate from a rate standpoint for the different risks that we take. but yeah, I grew up more as a sales and marketer. So for me, I spend more of my time both internally and externally selling than I do internally and externally number crunching.
Right. So I got to ask you this, and this is way off base of what I want to talk about, but okay, coming on during COVID, starting the month of kind of when everything happened and being over the travel section, and I know travel insurance probably went wild during kind of everything, stuff getting canceled and obviously the health side of it back and forth. What was that like from a business management perspective, coming onto a company and kind of having that whole industry getting flipped upside down?
So Zurich acquired a company called Covermore back in 2017, and they acquired a company called TravelX a year prior. TravelX, which is a more recognized name in travel insurance in the United States, had a really good year in 2019. 2020, we were up in the record months in January and February from a production standpoint. And if you've ever heard of falling off a cliff, our business, which we had intended to double from 2019 to 2020, was less than a tenth. So it truly fell off of a cliff. And right now we diversified, we lifted and shifted and tried to find different ways to at least keep it floating. So we have an affinity business, and we have different pieces of our travel insurance business that fit with rental car companies, that fit with other distribution channels like that. So that's what we did. We relied on the bits and pieces to kind of at least keep us afloat, which, we're on a good recovery path now. Still recovering, but I would say that by 2023, we should probably be back to the pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah. No,
but yeah, it was a crazy business to inherit.
I bet it was. I mean, it was just, everything was changing on a daily basis, I mean, month to month, everything's different. Even now, my wife and I have an anniversary this summer. We were looking to travel down in the Caribbean area, and we were finding out different things with COVID. Is you have to have this done, or you have to quarantine 4 days immediately when you get here, or this. It's a juggling deal. So it makes it tough for sure.
It does. I wouldn't want to be an international traveler in the midst of all this stuff, because it is just difficult. And that's what really killed the travel insurance business, was all of the trip cancellations, all of the out-of-country medical, all of the forced quarantining. Yeah. That was all unplanned for when you build insurance products.
No, you're wrong.
It was a big loss for the industry.
Yes, it was. Well, look, Chris, when I'm thinking about Zurich, I looked on your website probably a week or two ago and saw that you guys have 55,000 employees globally now. When you're looking just from a large scale, you guys are one of the top 10 largest insurance companies in the world, according to Forbes. I mean, you got a huge organization. How do you keep your goals, your vision for your team? How do you keep the focus on that when there's so many different objectives throughout your organization?
I would say our biggest challenge is creating and maintaining relevance within a giant property and casualty company. Zurich, with those 55,000 people, of which 8,000 of them are domestic here in the United States, our global accident and health premiums are less than a toenail on the organism. And so from that perspective, creating relevance on a day in and day out basis, getting the resources, fighting for the investment that we need to continue to grow our business, that's the challenge that we face. And then even telling the accident and health story, the life accident and health story, whereby, the property and casualty world is prone to catastrophes, be that earthquakes, forest fires. So set aside the pandemic from the past 2 years, our business historically is not prone to catastrophe losses. And, the stability of earnings in the accident and health business is kind of what we focus on when we're talking to our organization about getting that capital that we need to expand. And also the, property and casualty from a business perspective, it either grows or shrinks as a result of hard and soft markets.
Yeah.
So in those markets, when it's hard, it's easy to get rate. It's easy to show growth. When the market softens, it's really hard to get growth. So if a company needs growth to continue to, establish itself amongst its peers as a leading provider, they turn to product lines, business segments like accident and health for that. So that's what my hope is, that we continue to get the investment that we're getting now, because they're very bullish about the accident and health business right now.
Yeah.
And we have been fortunate to have recovered from COVID. We grew by about 25% last year, in a year following a year that we shrunk. So I'll put air quote around it. But in this year we have high hopes to continue that growth pattern. And that's what the organization looks for. So fighting for wallet share, whether it's accident and health, financial lines, construction, life sciences, all the different business lines that exist in a P&C organization. I think we're doing a good job of maintaining, at least creating an aspirational vision of what we could be.
Right. So let me ask you this: when you're kind of going out for market share, right? And you saw 25% growth last year over the previous year. What does that look like? How do you lay out the plan and kind of attack for your team when you're kind of going out there? You're creating relevance with the big company, and then you're trying to show your team, hey, here's how we have to attack. How do you build that plan of attack for your team?
I think it's two or threefold. I think it starts with the game plan. What markets do we go after, and why do we go after those markets? And what we have historically looked for from again, our core business unit is we've been relatively steady Eddie in providing good service and fair rates, and we've relied on that to continue to slowly grow in the markets that we were in. Which those markets that we were in primarily were again, that group accident business, which for Zurich 3 years ago meant business travel accident insurance, special risk insurance, occupational accident insurance, primarily in the transportation industry, and then stop loss and some managed care excess business. I think finding markets that are more opportunistic have been kind of where we've gone in the past 3 years. So things like gap medical insurance, things like supplemental health insurance, things like the gig economy. Focusing on markets that have a lot of runway have been kind of the direction that we've been focusing people on. And in so doing, I think we create a level of energy and a level of excitement in that, you don't have to come to work and be bored anymore. You could do different things. So I brought on some talent from my past that have those kind of different kinds of experiences and those different relationships. I've been saying for us, it's all about relationship management and customers and selling. And, that's, I think what we've done is we've created a business that is much more diverse, much more sustainable, whereby prior, we mentioned travel insurance. If we relied on travel insurance 2 years ago, we would have been out of business.
Right.
But we had other cylinders that were firing, even in the course of that. So, from a game planning perspective, finding the right markets to be in, building a plan around that's both realistic but aggressive, finding talent that has those expertise, be that distribution talent, underwriting talent, a lot of it tied to having relationships externally, hiring people that external people trust, and then assembling the talents into a logical go forward path, I think has been what's worked for us in the past couple of years. We've made a couple of acquisitions here or there where it made sense. We continue to focus on again, that diversification strategy.
So,
And
so you
go
so
ahead.
you talk about diversification. You talk about maybe even some acquisition from that standpoint. Um, you guys are talking about a large insurance company and how you take things to market. 210 countries, and I got to say, when I saw you were in 210 countries and territories globally, I didn't even know there was 210 countries. So I giggled a little bit when I saw that, but how do you figure out which markets, which acquisitions, which product diversification you go to? Are you looking for niche products? You looking for, hey, what are the brokers saying? Are you looking, hey, what's the market need? Like the gig economy, that's something that's just really kind of gone full bore here in the last few years. How do you kind of decide which avenue to go after?
I think I think you come up with some kind of an algorithm that works for you, that takes into account barriers of entry,
Yeah.
that takes into account ease of entry, that takes into account upside potential, and then how quickly and how difficult will it be to expand in those kind of markets. So I mentioned, the Affordable Care Act did a lot for businesses like yours and ours, whereby it opened the door to, it kind of created that high deductible health insurance marketplace.
Right.
And we do not sell health insurance. What we do is we sell things that wrap around health insurance that make it easier for consumers to afford coverage.
Yep.
So that's a huge market potential for, I think, any insurance company to think about, trying to, solve for what the consumers need. That's gotta, I think for all of us, that has to be number one. And then, taking into account the barriers of entry, the ease of entry, the volume potential, to kind of chart a path forward. That's, I think, what we've done. So with that diversification that I mentioned earlier, supplemental health has been a big part of that.
Yep.
Markets that are growing, like the gig economy. The gig economy is really just a bunch of independent contractors that happen to be, accessed through an application.
That's right.
Fastest growing market segment, I think, in the United States, probably worldwide. So what you have is a bunch of people who have decided that they'd rather make their living or supplement their income using, as an independent contractor, using a phone as a dispatch vehicle. And through that, you have the ability to communicate, but you have a billing vehicle, you have a communication vehicle, and you have a big population of potentially underserved customers. That's why the gig economy, I think, represents huge opportunity for everybody. Think of millennials and Gen X, people who are under the age of 30 to 35. That's, I think, the panacea for all of us as insurers. If we could figure out how to get those people that may not yet have children, that may not yet have a house, get them interested in some kind of insurance that makes their life easier, and billing them automatically, giving them the ability to buy without talking to them. Selling people, with using the Amazon approach.
That's right.
That's I think, those are the different things, so when we look for markets, when we try to grow business, I just view the gig economy as just a huge opportunity for everybody.
I agree with you, Chris, and I'm gonna kind of bounce around to my thought process here and jump to a technology type question, because I agree with you. I think the gig economy, how do we access these people? How do we make it easy for them to purchase? Like you said, the Amazon process, the 1, 2, 3, 4, everything's here, pick what we want, pick what's affordable, and kind of move forward. And I think technology has to be able to do that for people. Insurance is one of those things that people don't necessarily enjoy talking about. Talk about it at a Friday night event, you'll quickly have people disperse from you. But I think it's something we have to make more friendly, more user friendly from a technology standpoint, from an understanding perspective as well. How do you see technology changing in the insurance market in the United States or North America? How do you see insurance or technology playing and having an impact on insurance in the future?
I think it will be part of every facet of the insurance business going forward. Be that, enrollment, pricing, claims, operations, servicing, billing, collections. I think technology is a part of all of that. In the past 6 months, we've had conversations about artificial intelligence as it relates to underwriting. We've had conversations about the ability to pay claims using Venmo. We've had conversations about enrollment engines all digitally, microsites, easily customizable, everything being accessible in a mobile environment. That's the conversations I think we all have on a day in and day out basis. And I think if you look at the rise of the insurtech, I think that paints the picture, clearer than anything that we can talk about, because there are a ton of insurtechs that all have a bunch of really interesting ideas that are out there. And it's we as the insurance company community are probably in last place when it comes to deploying technology. Technology for us still means, how do we enhance our internal underwriting systems? How do we use FTP to collect data? How do we push it all downstream so it fits into our old, IBM infrastructures? Once we do catch up, and once we do put the availability of capital kind of there at the forefront, I think it'll do our industry a world of good, because we'll all now talk on the same channel, rather than all of our distribution communities, all of our external servicing communities, third-party administration communities. They're all really good at staying forefront.
Yeah.
Once we catch up to even 10 years behind where they are, where we're able to seamlessly integrate with that technology infrastructure, that technology forefront, to me, that's where we're going. In 10 years, I view almost everything being automated.
I
agree. I remember, Chris, probably I think it was 2007. Our president, David White, said, we're going completely electronic at the office. We're getting rid of all the paper, all the filing cabinets, everything's gone. We're going 100% electronic. And I remember at that time, it was huge. It's like, is he gone crazy? I mean, it was one of those, everyone was trying to figure out how we're going to do this, and, how's Sally going to get trained on how to access these documents? And, we did that, and within 3 months after we did it, we never looked back. It was one of the best things we'd ever done. We had so much more space in our office. We had more room for people, for cubes, and it was one of these things that was great, and everyone was able to access the information quicker. But I think from a leadership standpoint, my question would be for you is, how do we get our teams, how do we get leadership in our organizations and everyone to get on board maybe with moving forward technology or moving forward product deployment? How do we get everyone to that spot that we got them moving forward? Because like you said, sometimes in the insurance industry, we can almost become complacent and not move the ball forward when it comes to technology or other things. How do we move that ball forward better?
I would say kind of two things, from a Zurich perspective. One, Zurich kind of gets it. We're at that point where a lot of our internal conversations are all about, how do we digitize? How do we create the technology? And, we've taken it a step farther where we tie it to, how can companies like ours have an impact on, worldwide sustainability in the environment? If you think about what you just mentioned with Morgan and White, where you went electronic and you got rid of the requirement of paper and the requirement of files and the requirement of, all of that, the infrastructure that takes resources to engage. Zurich has a goal of being one of those zero emission companies by 2030. And it might be an aggressive goal. Zurich plants 1 million trees a year. Zurich is very quickly trying to go to a completely paperless environment. even to the conversations earlier that we had about, pre-pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, where we all went to Zoom calls. Yeah. I look back and I see, I remember June of 2020, driving down the Schuylkill Expressway in Philadelphia and being the only car on it. And I wonder how healthy it was for the earth to have a year's worth of no emissions. That's a big part of, I think, what this digital economy will bring to the world. From an insurance company, how do we embrace it? We have largely made the investments to try to eliminate that old IBM mentality. We are now a cloud-based company. We rely on technology for, I would say, half of what we do today. And it's a funny dynamic for companies that, once you go digital, how does that impact the workforce? That's one of those things that I haven't yet put my arms around or my head around. But if you automate the claims process, how many claims people does that affect? Yeah. If you go to automatic enrollment, online enrollment, digital enrollment, how does that impact the call centers? All of the, it's still an interesting problem that we all need to kind of embrace. But I think, for our kids, I think it's a great directional tool. We're trying to improve the world that we broke.
Yeah. I looked at, you talk about kids and talking about technology and some of the different things there. My son the other night, we were talking about building a website for something, and he said, "Oh, Dad, I can build that." I said, "You know how to build this?" He said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "I learned that in my coding class, and then I also had an HTML class," and he said, "We had to build websites." And I started thinking about the show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? And I said, I will never laugh at those people again, because there it was. I know what he's talking about, but I don't know how to do what he's able to do. And it's just impressive the way some of those things are moving forward, and the kids and the younger generation now is being trained on this type of stuff, and how it will help with a lot of the things that you're talking about there as well.
I agree. And yeah, it is. Kids are amazing. My son just graduated from Northeastern with a degree in computer science, computer engineering. And, he's actually going to work in a quasi-insurance industry, one of those technology providers that support our industry. Yeah. And you know what? He's not going to have that same, going back to the beginning of our conversation, whereas how did you fall in the insurance business? Yeah. He doesn't view himself going to work in the insurance industry. He views himself as going to work in a technology field. Yep.
Well, that's what we probably have, about 20 to 30 programmers on staff here that we use for different things. And it's just a different world for that. And we could probably use 60 to 70 of them, and they're huge asset to our organization. But there's always another project, right? They said that, I heard something the other day, they were going into, for every system you build within 4 years, it's out of date. And if you're not rebuilding or updating the system that you're building, you're falling behind and it's going dead. And so I think that it's a huge piece of technology and learning on that side. But let me ask you this, few last quick questions I have for you, Chris, if you don't mind. I always like getting different people's advice on certain topics. And so I wanted to say, what is the best leadership advice you may have received that you'd want to share with the audience today?
I don't know if this is leadership advice that I've received, or just something that I've learned throughout my career. It's just as easy to, close and implement a mouse as it is to close and implement an elephant. So go elephant hunting.
I like that one.
And then, from the perspective of, my leadership style, I guess would be, I tend to, we're all people, whether you're the CEO of a company or whether you're a customer service representative for a company, we're all going to work to try to make our families' lives better. So treat everybody with respect. and the dignity that they deserve for trying to accomplish that monumental task of taking care of your family. And then just, everybody has a different point of view. So listening to people and not having the answer, but knowing that the answer comes from the experts that you have working with you so have people work with you instead of for you. I think that's my leadership style. I don't know if it's advice, but worked for me. So I have a really strong team of leaders, and, I trust each of them to manage their business and to do what's right for their business. And I know that I wouldn't succeed without them.
Yep. Be someone that people want to be around, right?
Exactly. Do business with people that you like to do business with, because life's too short.
David always says here at our office, he said, I used to have to do business with anyone just because I needed the business. Now I actually get to pick who I want to do business with. And I think it's treating people the way you want to be treated, like you mentioned earlier. Big reason for that. So look, one more question for you. From a sales standpoint, distribution standpoint, you can kind of take it whatever way you want. What's the best advice you've either received or what you've learned from that side of the business?
I would say be persistent. No is just a word. I would say that, creating relationships, hanging around, listening, being someone that people want to listen to, being someone that people want to hang out with. In the long run, I think that's what gets business. I've been fortunate in my career. I've closed a couple of $1 billion worth of insurance. 2 or 3 of those elephants and a whole bunch of, dogs in between. And even a couple of mice. But, it's always, nothing was ever here you go, here's my business when I walked in the front door. It's taken time. It's taken, thought process and kind of creating a plan, and then following the plan, following up, being creative, being an ally, being a resource, even if they're not customers yet. Being an ally and a resource, I think, is an important component of the sales process. And then, just be thoughtful. It's really, selling is one of those, it's a combination of persistency for me, thoughtfulness, being smart, and then just not quitting until you get your job done.
No.
It's persistent.
I love it, Chris. And so look, one more random question, I promise, this is the last one. What is your favorite business book?
My favorite business book, believe it or not, American Bankers is great because they force us to read business books. And it's kind of between two. It's a book called, and it's not even a business book, but we read it as a business book. It's called Siddhartha.
I have not heard of that one. Okay.
And then The Art of War.
Good one.
Good one. No, I love that. Well, Chris, man, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. I know we've spoken before, but it was great to get to spend some time with you and pick your brain on this. I know it's very, very much appreciated from our audience and listeners, people listening in. So thank you for taking the time to share with us today.
You got it. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for joining us on the Insurance Leadership Podcast today, where a good plan today is better than a great plan months from now. Thanks again.